1. I'm 22 now. This happened when I was around 13 or 14. Me and my mother were on a hike through Panther Creek Trail in northern Georgia. We hiked around 4 or 5 miles into the trail. Keep in mind, we have never hiked on an actual trail, nor had we ever been to this trail or were even familiar with this stretch of wilderness as we lived in metro Atlanta. Our goal was to reach a huge, beautiful waterfall at the end of the trail, Panther Creek Falls. There was a couple in front of us pretty much the entire hike, around 2 or 3 hours once we'd reached around the 2 or 3 mark. The couple in front of us were talking with each other and said that it was getting late and they should probably turn back before it got dark. One thing I should note is that there are parts of the trail that are very tight trails on the side of hills, which had no guard fences or rails, and the trail had a 50 to 150 feet drop into a creek at the bottom lined with huge boulders. Notably, there is a part of the trail that you actually had to shimmy across, as it was only maybe 8 or 9 inches wide and on a rock face. Back to the couple, who were talking about turning back. My mom heard them talking about it and told me the same, that we best turn back. Being a teen who thought he was invincible, I convinced her I could make my way to the falls quickly and turn back to meet up with her on the hike back to the parking lot. She argued, but eventually let me go. After another hour or so of hiking, I made it to the falls and took some pictures as the light was fading. Nobody else was there at the base of the falls with me. I noticed it really started to get dark quickly, and I started to get a little worried since I knew it was going to be a good couple of hours to get through the trail on the way back. After an hour of hiking, I was in complete darkness, with my only light being the one from my phone. I did bring a backpack with water, a knife, and other bits and baubles. It was a completely non-moonlit night, and the only way I was navigating was by pointing my light at the ground to see the trail to keep on it. At one point, I started to get really scared by the noises of animals and forest sounds, so I decided to pull my knife out of my backpack. I held the knife the majority of the 3 or 4 miles until I got to the part where you have to shimmy across, and so I had to put my phone light into my pocket so I could have a hand free to grab the rock and shimmy across. And so I did. My knife fell out of my hand, and it made no noise for over 10 seconds, then hitting a rock with a metallic sound way down. I knew if I fell, I was done for. Luckily, I made it across and managed to get back onto the trail, getting my bearings. I looked at the phone to try and get service and call my mom or the police. As I felt I was in extreme danger, I could barely see the trail at this point. I looked and saw my phone battery was on 3%. This being my only light source made me start to panic to the point of tearing up. I continued on the trail with my battery slowly fading as I used the flashlight. As I was walking, the phone flashlight only lit up about 2 or 3 feet in front of me. I mean, it was damn near pitch black, a darkness I have never before or since experienced. Just as I was walking, out of the darkness from in front of me came a man. He was walking toward me from the opposite side of the trail, from the direction I was heading in. He scared the bejesus out of me. I literally jumped at the sight of him. It was so instant. That's when I noticed he had no flashlight, a small sport backpack, and absolutely a motionless face and dead eyes, staring completely past me. When I saw him, and he scared me, I immediately said, "Hey, what's up, man? I'm trying to get out of here." He never said anything as he passed me. I looked back, expecting him to turn and talk to me, but he never did. In the moment, I thought it was so strange. Then I thought about it and realized, how the hell is anyone supposed to navigate this trail and its many challenges at night in pitch-black darkness with no flashlight? To this day, I still think there was no way anyone could navigate the trail at night, with no light source, familiar or not. I immediately got a terrible gut feeling about him and started sprinting off the trail through the trees towards lights and sounds of cars in the distance. After a couple of minutes, I found myself on the side of highway, where I then used the last bit of battery to call my mom, and she was crying and asking me where I was. She ended up picking me up at a gas station 2 miles away from the trail entrance, running over my foot on accident in a moment of panic to get me in the car. I later told her the whole story, and we haven't hiked since. We're not good at it, have no experience, and quite honestly, this whole experience scared both of us. I don't know if the guy was a ghost, a person trying to catch people on the trail and do things to them, or a figment of my imagination, but I did not care to stick around long enough to find out. 2. This happened to me sometime in 2014. I won't specify the location so as to not have problems with the owners of the house, but I can only say that it happened in a small town. Some friends and I went to a relative's house located in the mountains. You probably get the idea, a 2-story cabin in a clearing on a mountain surrounded by pine trees. We arrived around 11 a.m. We unpacked the little we had brought, since some of our friends would bring the rest of our camping gear. The cabin was used only as a summer home. We cleaned up a bit and settled in. From the moment we arrived at the land near the cabin, we could smell an unmistakable odor of rotting flesh. We didn't give it any importance, since more than once we saw the occasional cow carcass around there, since the area was used for cattle ranching. If you ask me, the smell is sour, is penetrating enough to make you weep. At about 1 in the afternoon, I sat in a rocking chair which was on the balcony, which had no railing at that time. Out of nowhere, I feel like a car hits me in the rear, and I am thrown forward into the abyss. As best I could, I grabbed onto the overhang of the cornice, and was in a position that is difficult to describe. But I didn't fall to the first floor at that moment. I quickly turned around, thinking that one of my friends had made a bad joke. But there was no one there. On the contrary, I could see them all in the pool down the hill. On impact, the rocking chair I was in shattered into pieces. Now it was just a tangle of metal tubes and fabric. I had some bruises on my back, so I quickly whistled for the pool boys to come back. When they came back and were in the living room, a noise that to this day makes me shake began to sound throughout the house. The exact point of origin was unknown, since we all heard it coming from different places. A sound which to this day, after searching hundreds of sounds of animals, cars, or things, I have never found anything similar. The closest I could describe is that it sounded like a woman screaming combined with someone gargling very loudly. We were full of fear. Moments later, something began to throw things towards the front of the house, things like stones, branches, etc. They even threw a huge bone at us, which sometime later we realized was the femur of a horse. The harassment continued until nighttime. The rest of the group that was still in the city could not come earlier because there was some kind of landslide on the road or something. It was around 8 p.m. We were terrified. We armed ourselves with whatever we could find, kitchen knives, shovels, and even an old metal pipe. When we left, no one saw anything except me. I'm still trying to put my finger on what I saw, but I can describe it as that weird image of the Florida skunk ape. But made of something similar to newspaper. It was sort of black and white. It was about 20 meters away from where I was, and I only saw it because a spotlight on a wall was shining on it. When it saw me, it made the strange sound I mentioned earlier and took off running. There was no sound. Although, considering its height, the thing would have been 4 meters tall. It made no sound as it ran. It disappeared into the woods, and it looked back. After the activity stopped, and when the rest of the kids arrived, we left immediately. 3. I haven't experienced anything I'd call extreme, rather subtle. In fact, I'm the guy who usually explains this stuff off as natural occurrences. But I'm feeling a bit over my head, and where else do you go? A church, as seen in movies? Open up the yellow pages and look up the number for Ghostbusters? So, to Reddit I came. I'll just say I live in the South, in a rental home built in 1987, clearly been remodeled, but after living here for 2 years you can tell its bones are older. I have an older teenage daughter who loves horror movies, typical drama fan, etc., as well as a roommate and, as of last year, a partner who has basically moved in. All 3 of them have discussed seeing weird things happen in our house. My daughter has, since moving into this house, complained that she has never felt alone anywhere in the house. She only recently has become comfortable with being here by herself. Now, I have to admit, this particular situation isn't the first unexplained situation regarding my kid. In a previous rental, about 10 years ago, I was in the living room, and I heard her call for me from the bathroom, where she was taking a shower. Thinking she forgot a towel or something, I knocked on the door and entered. She asked me, "Dad, were you just in here?" To which I replied, "No, kid, clearly I wasn't in here." I thought, what a ridiculous question, as my eyes looked to the floor and saw 2 wet footprints perfectly side by side, facing towards the sink and mirror, typical direction when you exit this shower. I asked the kid, "Yo, why did you get out of the shower?" To which she said, "Dad, I haven't gotten out of the shower since I got in." That's when I looked again and realized that these footprints, while clearly a woman's, were not the size of my child's feet. I got chills all over my body, and without causing alarm, got my kid out of the shower. I pretty much wrote that off as a one-off experience. Could I have been seeing things? Who knows, unexplainable. Left it alone. My kid eventually heard me tell that story to a friend, and is convinced it was a ghost. Moving on, as of late. So the kid is saying she's feeling things. The roommate has come down to my room at random hours, asking if I was knocking on his door. They swear someone was. But who knows? Could be his dog doing something on the floor and causing sounds, wrote it off. My partner has been staying over for a few months, and now he's convinced there's paranormal activity going on. For him, it started off as hearing footsteps upstairs when nobody is up there, hearing other weird noises. But then he started mentioning seeing a shadow-type figure out of the corner of his eye. That's when I started paying more attention. Why? Because I admittedly have been seeing a crazy shadow figure out of the corner of my eye pretty much the entire time I've lived here. I've just written it off as shadows even when it's super dark out, and the rooms are only lit by a consistent source of light, like floor lamp. I work from home, and have the dog and my cat here with me while everyone is at work. I have pictures and video of the dog and cat staring into my empty bathroom as if something interesting is in there. I've witnessed the dog freak out for literally no reason, but these are animals, so easy to write off weird behavior. But, combined with everything, I'm now seriously wondering if I'm dealing with something else entirely. So now I'm more engaged with these conversations within my household. I admitted the things I've experienced, and we have agreed to move to a new home. Not because of this, but let's just say if we were 50-50 on the moving, this pushed us in favor of moving just a little. But since we have made that decision, things have gone from subtle to straight up freaking weird. My partner a couple of weeks ago was putting dishes away. He just emptied the silverware from the dishwasher and was going for the mugs. He grabbed a mug, and when he looked up, the cupboard that houses the mugs was already opened, though he swears he didn't open it. That spooked him pretty good. Then a few days ago, he got into his car to go to work, and as he put his car in reverse, he looked in his rear-view mirror and saw a smallish shadow figure in his back seat. Said it scared the poo out of him. He described it, but it doesn't look anything like the shadow I've seen. Mine looks more like the shadow of Maui from Moana. Ridiculous, I know, but that's the best description I've got. Then last night, we are in the kitchen making spaghetti together. He goes in the fridge to put the sour cream back in the door and shuts the door. I go in right behind him for some ketchup, also in the door, and when I open it, I'm not exaggerating even a little. I mean, I'm here laying it all out, but a small case of blueberries was literally thrown out of the refrigerator at me. This package has already been eaten from, so it wasn't full, but it was as if it was left open and on a springboard. I'm not kidding, just wild. A couple of hours later, my partner goes back into the kitchen to refill his water container, and the cat goes out to get his drink before bed. My cat has just lifted his head from taking a drink. When his bowl is pushed 6 to 8 inches towards him, he freaked out and jumped like 4 feet in the air, hair puffed all out like he just took a bolt from Zeus himself. Somebody tell me, what the frick am I dealing with in this house? And maybe more importantly, how the hell do I prevent it from coming with me to my new house? I know the many battles from the Civil War happened all around these parts, but dang, not really trying to deal with some paranormal crap from that era. There's a church on every corner in this state, but the whole partner thing? Yeah, they don't much like my kind anyways. Here goes nothing. 4. When I was 13 years old, I went camping with my school. When I arrived, I noticed the camping spot was just some tents in a dark and creepy forest. The tents were small, and we had to share a tent with 12 others. I liked the activities we did. We built a boat, we played football, and we roasted marshmallows around a campfire. When it was time for sleeping, I chose the bed all the way at the back. I opened my suitcase and realized I did not bring my pajamas. I slept with my normal clothes on for the next 3 or 4 hours until I was woken up by a loud rumbling noise. I slowly turned around and saw 2 creatures hunched over my suitcase. They were searching for something, I thought. I reached my arm out to touch whoever this person was, and I felt something harsh. If I were to describe it, I would say it felt something like old wood. After I had touched it, I asked who it was, and I somehow fell back asleep. In the morning, I was woken up by my alarm on my phone. We were not allowed to bring a phone, so I was sure I had turned my alarm off before sleeping. How could this have happened, I asked myself. I know it was not the other kids. I had not even told them I had my phone with me. Neither did I know them that well. They did not seem like jokesters to me. My alarm woke up most of the kids in the tent. They asked whose it was, so I just acted like I was sleeping to avoid being suspected. We had to wake up around this time anyway, so I jumped out my bed and I walked outside. It was really cold and I really had to pee. I walked around the tent and I peed in the bushes. I turned around and saw a dead rabbit right outside of where I slept. I called the teacher over and he told me it must have been killed by something. He said he would call the staff to clean it up. This day was not really that interesting. I mostly just laid in bed eating candy and thinking about what happened that night. It quickly turned dark, and we roasted some marshmallows and ate some pasta. The pasta was cold and stale, but I was hungry, so I didn't care that much. 1 hour later, it was almost bedtime, and my teacher had told me if I wanted to go to the bathroom at night, I would have to go in a duo because the forest is very dangerous at night. I did not think much of it, but I chose my duo just to be sure. Then it was bedtime. I made my bed, I fell asleep. Again I was woken up, but this time not by weird creatures, but by my urge to pee. I tried waking up my duo, but he did not wake up. I decided to go alone. I walked all the way to the front of the tent, waking some up in the process, and I walked out. It was really cold and dark. I could barely see. I looked over to the benches, and there it was again, looking at me. It was really tall, and it seemed to have something in its hands. It looked like an animal. I was stood still looking at it for maybe 20 seconds, until I decided to continue walking to the toilets. I opened the toilet door, I took a leak, I washed my hands and left. When I returned, I looked at the benches again. The creature was gone. Was it haunting me specifically? No one else had seen it, only me. If anyone knows what this could have been, please tell me. 5. The other night around midnight, my mother-in-law, who lives on the opposite end of an adjoined 1-acre plot of land as my wife and I, called my wife, telling her she was hearing a loud wailing sound out back of their house, past the tree line. We live in the mountains at the base of a forest. My wife got my attention and told me to come to the window, where we listened for about 10 minutes. There was a very loud feminine wailing coming from the woods. It was something like the sound a fox or a coyote makes, but each wail was much longer, louder, and more human. I have since looked up every wild animal in my area and have yet to match the sound I heard to one of them. Right around the time I thought to record the sound, it stopped. I've listened to the recording a few times to see if maybe I caught a glimpse of the sounds it was making, but I don't think I caught it. In the recording, though, my mother-in-law talks about how when she first heard the sound, she turned the porch back on and walked outside. She has 2 German shepherds that will bark at just about anything, and spend the majority of their time outside laying in the yard. Neither of them made a sound, nor did either of them want to go outside with her. She said she went outside and clapped her hands to try and scare it away. After a little bit, she saw what she said was a small grey cat, looking to be about domestic size. It walked up the far side of the creek that separates the backyard from the woods, but didn't move any closer, and then proceeded to go back up the hill into the woods. She said it felt like it was trying to lead her somewhere. She, being an animal lover like my wife, said she was worried that there was an animal trapped or hurt, and like some video from the dodo, she was going to go into the woods and find some helpless animal to nurse back to health. Being of sound mind, she called us to tell us this and say that she was afraid to go out there by herself, and had asked if I would be willing to bring a gun to protect us, in case there was a coyote or something else once we got up there. At the sound of gun and woods and afraid, I was all ears. I grabbed my plate carrier, a couple of knives, my pistol, shotgun, my Milwaukee chest-mounted bar light, and a small hand torch. My mother-in-law met my wife and I in our backyard, and I told them to drive up the side of the road to see if they could position the car to shine a light into the woods. I said I would walk across the back of their property, and go into the woods from there so as not to wake up my father-in-law or alert the dogs. I made my way over and approached the woods from the right side of the property. Just so you understand, the left side of the property is flanked by a long fence that stretches about 2 acres in length, back deep into the woods, separating our property from our neighbors. On the right side of the property is flanked by a small road that leads to a few more houses set far back behind ours. I walked over a small bridge that covers the stream separating the backyard from the woods, and walked diagonally toward the fence line. As soon as I stepped foot into the woods, I spotted something reflective just in front of the fence. I had yet to pull out any lights, so I turned on my hand torch and aimed it at the reflection. I walked a bit closer and the light didn't move, so I imagined it was just a bit of fence, catching the light. Once I was about 20 paces away from it, I saw that there was a small gray blob, roughly ovular shape, and covered in fur. My first and only thought was raccoon, because in that split second it added up. I then panned my flashlight to the right about 10 feet away, and it landed on a set of eyes. What I had seen before may just be this raccoon, but what I saw after that was something else. I think it was a little bigger than a coyote. It had gray fur, and honestly, I can't recall if it had a tail or ears or anything else. It was both canine and feline in characteristics, leaning more toward canine in appearance. It stared into the light at me for a few moments, and then started walking slowly deeper into the woods. As far as I know, coyotes and foxes alike would be out of there as soon as they smelt me or heard me take one step into the woods. Stranger still, this thing was not 10 feet away from this raccoon, and they seemed to be perfectly content. I swept the light back to the raccoon as it moved behind a large pile of rocks toward the fence. I thought it must have been a burrow or something. I panned back toward the creature, and it had moved very far, deeper into the woods. I can't recall seeing it actually move. I can't recall seeing its rear end. I just looked up into the woods towards a crest at the top of the hill, and saw its eyes staring at me. I'm not one to just waltz through the woods in the middle of the night. In fact, if I was asked to just go into the woods at night, armed the way I was, I probably would have freaked out, even if there wasn't anything out there. Strangely, I was completely calm. As soon as I met its gaze, I turned on my chest-mounted floodlight, and started making my way towards it. I walked probably about 100 feet deeper into the woods. It still hadn't moved. I kept walking until I saw my neighbor's house. The stretch of woods between their house and the fence narrowed out, between the two where a hill sat. The creature had been at the top of the hill, just barely over the crest, when I hear crunching far off behind me at the base of the woods. It was my wife and mother-in-law. I looked back and saw their flashlights. When I turned back to look for the eyes again, they had disappeared beyond the crest of the hill. I kept walking until I had a realization that I must have passed our property line. I pulled out my phone and called my wife and asked her where it ended. She told me there's a line of small red flags from where we installed our electric fence last summer. I looked all around and couldn't see any. Keeping my eyes toward the hill, I started walking backwards toward our property. I had walked back about 100 feet before I saw the line of small flags. Once there, I turned and made my way back down the hill. I met them at the base of the woods and showed them where I had seen the two animals. We made our way back down the yard and just barely made it into the back porch when another wail was let out. This time it was different. It was similar, but it was a deeper pitch. It had come from the direction of the creature I followed. From the moment I pressed record to the moment I left the woods, not a single sound was made. It was completely silent. That whole time I felt no fear, just an urge to follow it. It was just pure curiosity. Now, when I think back on it, it makes me nauseous. Listening to the recording from the other night makes me nauseous too. I'm not sure what to think. Maybe you guys can help shed some light. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 424. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you'd like to support the channel, do so by signing up for my Patreon page, which is linked in the description, as is a link to my merchandise store. Okay, no other business, so let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day, and today's question is... Tagging on to the last story there, if you heard a loud screech in the middle of the night, would you actually go out and investigate? I ask this because it did happen to me one night. You possibly heard me tell this story before. While I was recording, I heard a loud wailing of a child at night, and I actually went out because I was concerned there was some child out in the street in trouble. Didn't find anything, didn't hear the sound again, and then I realized it was probably just an animal that, it sounded like a child. But on reflection, it may not have been the wisest thing for me to do that at that time of night. So what do you think? If you were in that situation, would you go out investigating? Let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And today's answer comes from Paranormal Stories 422, and it was about, do you like to have your packages handed to you, or would you prefer they just leave them by the door and notify you when they are so you can go get them at your own convenience? And today's answer comes from Toria Mansfield. This is the reason I invested in a Ring doorbell. I am home most of the time, but there are times when I have to run errands, etc. Thus, a Ring doorbell. Thank you very much for your answer, Toria Mansfield. Would like to get one of those myself at some point. Not today, but I would like to get one. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.